All right, we are live. Let me make sure. All right, we are live. Perfect, perfect. All right, guys. So I know some of you are all coming in. Don't worry, I am going to record this, but I wanted to come on live and show you guys how I evaluate land. I've been getting a lot of questions about this, so I figure it will be helpful for a lot of people to see how I evaluate land for either whether you want to build on it or if you want to use it for agricultural purposes like farmland, growing cannabis, things of that nature. So I am going to show you, it's going to be a whiteboard session tonight. I'm going to show you how I evaluate land. Now, remember the golden rule about anything in a free market is value is only placed on what a buyer is willing to pay for something or what a seller is willing to sell it for. So what I will show you is just a way to get in the ballpark. It is not going to always be what you can offer it. I'm looking at two places because I'm going live on a couple of different platforms. You can also check me out on my YouTube channel on Kelli. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook as well, guys. So you can tap in. And I would definitely be recording this and posting it on one of those platforms. So, but back to land. So the true value of anything is what someone is willing to pay for something. That's the value of it. So I'm going to show you two different ways of how you can evaluate land. The first way is going to be bottom up. The bottom up approach basically is how we take the comparable sales of land around a specific subject property and evaluate the value. The other way is based on what you're willing to do or what you want to do with the land. So if you are looking to build multifamily, single family, and the development, retail space, it all depends on what you're willing to do with the property. Okay, so I'm going to show you both ways of how you can evaluate land. I'm going to show you some free stuff. Now, I can't show you how I do it on my computer. I'm going to walk you through it. I'll make a YouTube video where I actually record my screen and I can show you like how I actually do the calculations on software. But for tonight, we're going to be whiteboarding it out. Okay. So the first thing you want to get familiar on is you want to know these things. Obviously, you want to know the address. You'll have an address if the land was previously built on. If there was anything on there and it was cleared out, there usually will have an address because that means that utilities at one point was there. Or you will have a parcel number. Now, sometimes you will have an address though if the owner had already got it plotted out to have an address. So sometimes you will have an address if there was never a structure on there. So you want to have an address, obviously, or a parcel number, and then sometimes the APN, either of these numbers. So you definitely want to have these things first before you start evaluating. And then you also want to have the size of the lots or lots. So you want to have it either in lot size, which can be like a square footage, or acreage. Now, I do go ahead and put things in acreage. A number that you always want to remember. This is a number that if you ever want to get into land, flipping land, developing land, anything land related, you want to remember one number, and that's the number of what the square footage is for an acreage. So the square footage for an acreage is going to be 43,560. And so for all my realtors out there, you should know this. Like, this is something that you will always need to have. This is just a number you need to memorize. 43,560. That is how many square feet are in an acreage. 1 acre. Okay. So you want to know that. And it's really good for eyeballing it in the event like someone sends you something and it's in square footage and you don't know like how many acres in there. You can always determine what the acreage is based off of that simple calculation in your head. Okay. So if it's over 43,000 square feet, you know it's more than an acre. Okay. All right. So These are the things you need before you ever get started evaluating your property or your land. Okay. I'm going to take you through some general numbers that I think is going to be super helpful before you ever think about evaluating property. And that is the cost to develop it. Okay. The cost to develop it. These are some general ranges that you need to take note of whenever you're looking to develop out land. So if you're looking at raw land to develop, you want to make sure that your total cost to acquire the property is 3% of the total investment. Okay, let me repeat that. You want to make sure that raw land is 3% of the total investment. That's just for the raw land. Now, if you are looking to finish the land, that's going to be another 15 to 17%. And that ranges because of supply chain issues for right now and labor going up. So it could vary, could even go up to 20% in some markets. Okay. But in general, 15 to 17% is what it's going to cost to finish the land. This is important to know. In the event you're looking to develop something, build something on it, this is important to know. Like if you're going to use it for agricultural reasons, there's usually no utilities needed, no sewage needed, things of that nature, but you will need some costs associated with it. So just remember that this is going to be 3%, okay, of the total investment. And this is going to be, and then you're going to also need to factor in 15 to 17% of the total investment when you're looking to acquire land and when you're looking to develop it to come up with what you can pay for it. Okay. So those are the costs. And the reason why this is the cost, so altogether, it's going to cost you about 18 to 20% for finished land. Just want to add that in there. Like the raw land plus everything else to finish it will be this together. So it can cost you 18 to 20% to finish the land. And this is everything else. This 15 to 17 is everything that's required after you purchase the land. So like you would definitely need a survey done on it. The survey, what that does is it plots out the land for you. So a surveyor would be a licensed surveyor, would go in, they put what streetways, waterways, easements. They'll look at all different things for you and basically create a survey so that you can have pretty much a blueprint for the land itself. Okay, that's really what the survey does. It kind of acts like a blueprint for the actual land. Okay, so you're gonna have a survey done. You're gonna have a soil test done. Okay, you're going to have to check covenants and restrictions. So CC and R's. And why you want to do that is because you want to make sure that whatever you're planning to develop on this land or use this land for, that is within any covenants and restrictions for the land, because otherwise your entire project can be shut down. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have understood that, and there are people out there that will do this for you, this research for you. There are lawyers, real estate lawyers that will do this for you. Okay. All right. So the next thing you want to, and then also utilities, which is huge. And utilities include not just power, but water, sewer. I would advise you to, especially if you're in an area, you definitely want to make sure that you are developing in an area that has landfills and water treatment plants nearby. It just helps with cost because one is more valuable for sewerage, but then if you start with septic tanks, in some areas a septic tank is acceptable, and there's a lot of innovation that's happened with septic tanks, but you're going to find that type of you're going to find those type of areas where you can't tie into a sewerage. So you want to make sure that you identify that as well before you get into a deal. Not saying that you can't do a deal that only has septic tanks, but I would say that, you want to definitely look at that in your numbers and go on be very conservative on your numbers if you have to add septic tanks, because you will have to do it for each lot or for multiple lots. Okay. All right. And also, the value of a home usually is not as much. It could be, but people, what I found is mostly in the residential spaces, um, septic tanks are not as favorable for people. Okay. All right. So also you want to make sure that you consider if you have to have like a retaining wall. Okay. And then you also want to check water drainage and retention and water retention. Okay. So these are very important. You have to be able, that's what that survey is going to include as well. So if there's any slopes, dips, peaks, valleys, anything in the land that you're looking at, they're going to go through that and add that in their survey. That's why it's such a great, blueprint for the land. It's because they're going to tell you this is how high you need to build it. This is how deep you need to build it. If you do have to put any type of like a any type of retaining walls or any type of drainage, okay, water drainage. Okay. All right, so that is some of the things that are included in this cost here and to finish a land. All right, and then you also have to go through zoning and get it all platted out. But usually all those costs are wrapped up in like the survey. Okay, the surveyor is a person that's going to have a relationship with zoning ordinances in the metro areas or in your municipalities. So you want to make sure you get with a really great experienced surveyor that has great relationships in your local and county government offices. Okay. So these are the things you're going to need to know. I know this is like chicken scratch, but so let's just review this before we go back over it. So you want to know, you want to have the address or the parcel number. Okay. You need to have the lot size. You need to know this number, which is what square footage, what 1 acre is. Okay. And then you need to understand if the lot is finished or if it's raw land, because that determines how much you should add in your budget. Okay. To finish a lot, it's going to take 18 to 20% if it's on raw land. If it's already finished, you can eliminate 17 to 15 to 70% of your land, okay, of your cost here. Okay. Awesome. So let's move on to the next. So getting into actually evaluating a land. I go through several properties. Like I'm going through several today. That's why I thought about doing this, because I've been going through land deals all day, just evaluating property, evaluating square footage. People send in land deals for us to partner with them on or to purchase them, because we help people. We have relationships with builders all over the U.S. So our builders are always looking for more land to develop. Now, let me just go back also. There is a difference between developer and builder. So this is what a developer is, right? You develop, even if you never have a structure above ground, this is what a developer does is they take the time, he or she takes the time to go through these steps to develop land based on especially if they're working with a builder, to develop the land to make sure that all these things are done correctly. So you can be a builder, right? And get with a developer to help you do all of this. Or you can be the builder can be a developer as well. A developer can be a licensed builder. You can be both. Okay. Just like a broker can be an investor. You can do both. But these are two separate jobs essentially. Okay. So developer and a builder are two different types of professions. All right, so let's go to an example. So let's say we have a parcel or parcels, okay? It comes into you and it is, let's just say it is 80,000 square feet as the lot size. So let's go ahead. If you have calculators, you should go ahead and do this with me, okay? So 80,000 square feet. I know it's almost 2 acres, but I don't know the exact number. Divided by 53560. Okay, so that's 1.83 acres. Okay? Can't spell. Okay. So that's 1.83 acres of land that, and then let's say seller is asking for $200,000. Okay. So even without me, just because I evaluate a lot of land, if a seller is asking for $200,000 for 1.83 acres of land, I already know that this land is located in like a metropolitan area. It's not going to be normal where this amount of square foot, this amount of acreage is going to be for this amount, and if it's in rural areas. So if they're asking for this, my mind is already going towards a dwelling, like a single family, a couple of single family homes, a retail space, multifamily, industrial. But it all depends on what it's zoned for in that area. So just make sure that you check zoning also before you go into starting to plan out a development. You want to make sure that the plan that you have, you can actually be zoned for in that area. All right. So they're asking for $200,000. They're going to sell 1.83 acres of land. All right. So the first thing to do, this is what I call my bottom up approach. So bottom up approach just simply means that I'm going to look at what lots are selling for in that particular area, and I'm going to evaluate it based on that evaluation. I'm gonna place a value on it based on that evaluation. So let's just say that and here's some parameters that I use. Okay, these are what I set, and I've trained my underwriter to do this as well. Is we look at land up to a mile in radius. However, we exclude anything that crosses over major highways or roadways and waterways. Okay. Why do we do that? Well, because we know, for instance, I mean, we've been to areas where, we could, if we're on an interstate, where one side of the interstate and the other side of the interstate are two completely different types of real estate. And so we don't want to we don't want to place value if it's a $1 million subdivision and it's a starter home subdivision that a big roadway is separating them. We don't want to place the same value on that because it's different, right? So we want to make sure that we exclude anything that has that is separating or dividing the lots that we're going to look at to compare the subject lot to, if it has a waterway or a roadway. Okay, so exclude major roadways and waterways. Okay, exclude those. Those are not in your evaluation when you're doing a bottom up approach. Okay, so you want to make sure it's up to a mile in radius, and you want to exclude it. And then we look at when it was sold. So we're going to only go as far as a date sold. We're going to go up to 12 months. Okay. Up to 12 months for when a date is sold, when the property is sold, the land is sold. Okay. And then the other thing that we're going to look at is obviously, what was the size of the properties that we're comparing it to? What was their size? Because we need to stick in a range, somewhere of a plus or minus range of about 2 acres. Okay. So we're going to look at, let's just say, property A is 2 acres. Property B is 5 acres. Property C is 1 acre. Okay. We can use all of these properties, but we're going to look at what they were sold for. Let's say that property A was sold for, property A was sold for $250,000. Let's say property B was sold for 1.2 million. let's say property C was sold for 100,000. Okay. So what do we do with that, right? With this information, then we want to look at each one of these properties and divide it by the acreage so we can get the price per acreage sold. Does that make sense? So let's just say, so like for our subject property, if they're asking 200,000, they're asking 200,000 and 0.83. So they're looking for 109,289, and we'll leave out the cents, but they're looking for that per acre. Okay, that's what they're looking for per acre as far as the sale goes. So we're going to look at what the rest of the comparable properties are that are within a mile radius, that are not separated by a major roadway or major waterway, and that was sold up to 12 months ago. We're going to look at every one of these properties, all right? And we're going to determine what they were sold for per acre. So for subject property A, 250 divided by 2 acres, which I should already know that, which is 125. Okay, so 125 per acre. Okay. And then we have property B, which is 2 million divided by 5. So this one sold for, so this was sold a little bit at a premium cost because it sold for $240,000 per acre, right? And then obviously 1 and 1 that sold for $100,000 per acre. Okay. So what do we do next? Once we know like what 3 subject properties are selling for that are within an area of our subject property, they are kind of all over the place, right? And that's the biggest thing that I get with people is like, okay, this is why I tell people like value is only placed on what someone is willing to pay for it, right? And what somebody is willing to sell it for. But the best way that I tell people that what you can do to just get somewhere in the ballpark to have the conversation and decide how much you want to pay for it is take the average of these 3 and divide it by 3. So you have 125 for an acre here. You had 240. Now I would definitely look at this, right? I would make sure that this didn't have, I would want to know why this had a premium cost on it. Even though it was within a mile, there's a lot of things that can change within blocks of each other. So if you saw something that it did not look similar whatsoever, take it out of the equation. So for instance, let's say that in this area, this is mainly a residential area, but it's outside of the main point of interest in the city. So let's say you live downtown, right? But this area maybe is 10 to 12 blocks away from downtown. Maybe this one is only 3 blocks from downtown. It's still a house, still with some land that they can build on, right? But it was closer to downtown. So you want to factor that in because even though we look for a mile up, like that is why there is a premium on it. Now, I would take it out, but some people leave it in the equation. You can decide what you want to do, but I would take that out of the equation because I want to look at property when I'm doing a bottom up approach. I want to look at property that was the most similar to my subject property. Okay. But for this purpose, I'll leave it in. So 240 plus 125. Oh, here, 125 plus 100 divided by 3. So in general, land in this area is selling for $155 per acre. That is the bottom up approach. That is basically taking comparables in that area and determining what the value is of that land based on land that was recently sold in that area. And so with them asking 189 and we've came up with a value of 155, then I would say that that is a deal that we can look at, right? Because they're selling it at essentially a discount. Very much the same kind of way that if you were doing it, evaluating a house, that's how you evaluate land deals going from bottom up. Okay. So I see my inner circle. Let's go. Neil just had a baby. I can't wait to hear the update. Okay. So this is the bottom up approach. All right. So if you have questions, DM me. I don't have any. I'm in. I don't want to lose my train of thought. So let me know if you have any questions about this. Again, I will make a video where I will show my screen of how I go through the process of finding these numbers, because you definitely there's a couple of different paid ways and a couple of different free ways that you can go through to find these numbers. And I will do a YouTube video on that, and I will show you where I show my screen of how I come up with these numbers, okay? With what they like, I found where they sold for. All right, so that is the bottom up approach. And so with that, basically you would either accept their offer of 200,000, but that gives you some negotiating room. That lets you know that you have a deal here, right? But you want to make sure that it's still in line with this cost here. So let me show you, that's the bottom up approach. Let me show you the top down approach. Okay. And if you want to be really detailed, you'll do both. You'll do a bottom up approach and a top down approach to make sure that your numbers make sense. Okay. So let me actually do this just so I don't write on the bottom of this. Okay. So top up approach. I'm sorry, top down should be top down approach. That should go this way. Okay, top down approach is, let's say you have identified land and now you want to, before I do this, how do you do due diligence with the city of state? That's a good question. How do you do diligence with the city of state? I have a video also. I think I have it up on YouTube. But the first thing you want to do is get with your city planner in your city or county, and you want to introduce yourself, let them know what you're looking to do, and form a relationship. One thing about city planners is, one, they know the zoning for all the areas in their area, in their jurisdiction, but also they are going to help you as much as possible to get the answers you need. Because the one thing about city and county city planners is they want to promote growth and development and economic development in their area. So become friends with the city planner, find out who that is, and just ask questions. And then they will give you basically everything that you need to know in your area to make sure that you have done the due diligence and making sure that whatever land that you're looking at, that it can fit in that. Because think about this too, in some of these areas, they even have the power to rezone things if you need it to be rezoned. So that's why it's super important to become friends with them, because let's just say that something was, a C1 or one, and that's like commercial or R, and you need it to be a real estate, you need to be in the R's. If it meets certain parameters and they can get it to fit where it makes sense, they will rezone it for you in order for you to develop your project. So that's why I always encourage people to become friends with the city planner, because they have the power to rezone things, and they also can help you get all the information you need and put you with the right surveyors as well. All right. So top-down approach. So top-down approach is, let's say that you have identified a land, you've been in contact with the owner of land, and it fits something that you're looking to do with. Let's just say you're looking to build out a subdivision, and it fits in that the land, the size, the amount of houses that you can build, it fits in that scope of work that you're looking to do. and you've already went through your financials and your budget, and you've determined that you need 1.83 acres to build 5 houses with a return on your investment of 25+%, and then the entire project is going to be, let's say the entire project is going to cost you, let me give some more realistic numbers, because the entire project is going to cost you $3 million. Okay? You already have these numbers. This is what you want to do with the land. This is where you need to be. The entire project cost has to be $300,000. So we talked about this before here, where raw land, if it's raw land, needs to be 3% of your total cost. And then finished land needs to be the additional piece of finished land would need to be 15 to 17% of your total cost. So in order to finish land, it would need to be 18 to 20% of finished cost. And what that means is that you're going to get surveys, soil tests, you're going to check all your covenants and restrictions, you're going to get utilities, water laid, you're going to get a retaining wall, drainage if need be. You're going to have all those things done before you ever pad a lot and lay and start to pour concrete, okay? That's cost before you ever pin one or stake one lot to start building, okay? So with that, the calculation actually gets super simple. You just basically take the 3 million. I have my calculator here. You take the 3 million and you divide it by 0.2. No, you don't. You times it by 0.2. I got an old school calculator. Times it by 0.2. So you times it by 0.2. So that means that in order to, that your finished cost for the land would need to be $600,000, which we obviously know that we're already beyond that. So that means if we're looking at raw land, right? 300 million times 0.03. Yeah. So we're actually a little bit short because of raw land. We need to be at 90,000. So this is, and this is super helpful for you to go through this with like your owners when they, because you got to ask them how are they coming up with the price of the land, because sometimes they're just looking at what it was tax assessed for as a market value of the land, but what they're not understanding what the tax assessed and the value of the land is. Those values come from if there are other structures that are getting built, and if it was finished, like if it was what it was sold for. So they don't go through the tax assessors, they don't go through this entire process. They just look at what the value of the properties based around that area is, and then they have a calculation where they determine what the market value for the land is. They're not looking at what it costs to build out things. So we're looking at 200,000. We're looking at 90,000 to get the raw land, or we will pay 600. Let me just tell you this. This is why people are only developers. Okay, if they find land and they do all these steps that I told you about in this area, you don't ever have to build anything, because you can make money just by selling a property, right, that already is finished. Like that's a flip of itself. That's how a lot of people flip land. if they're developers. There's a lot of developers that just develops out the land and never builds on top of anything. So now we know that they're asking 200,000. We have identified a value based on sold comps for 155,000 per acre. Okay, but we need to get for budget reasons, we need to get the land at 90,000. Okay, so what do? There's a lot of different things you can do. I talked to some of my developers and builders that are looking to build land. Like, we can go back and do some creative finance with this. If they don't accept the $90,000 like in cash, I would definitely just go ahead and go in with the $90,000 in cash offer. I know that sounds like a lowball offer, but when you do people like that, take them through the education piece so they can get the information, because a lot of times they're just asking that much because they haven't been properly informed about how to get to that number. So I would, before you lowball someone, definitely take them through this information, step them through the process. If their number is their number, their number is their number. I then would suggest going through a creative finance deal. In a creative finance deal, then you can basically give them just about anything you want, because you'll pay them on the back end or you'll pay them over time. And so then what that means is you get the deed to the property, but you would make them the bank where you will finance the land through them as you build the property. Okay, so those are a couple of ways that I would have take this approach if we needed to get in at 90,000 for a budget reason. Even if the value is 155, because what happens with that is once you do your appraisals, and if you ever need like a construction loan, the bank is going to look at the value of your entire project, and they're going to base it on the value of it, and so you can make your money back on the back end that way. But the agreement would be is that you pay them on the back end. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions about this. I'll try to do more of these, but this is just how I evaluate land, from a top down and a bottom up approach. But the biggest things that you want to take from this is making sure that you understand, just based off of these percentages, if something is a deal or not, based off of the amount of land that is coming to you as a deal. All right, guys, that is all that I have. It is close to my bedtime, so I am going to check out and talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.